Ruth, this is a mode that can have us end up in quite significant amount of trouble. A mode that I talk to my clients about when we're wanting to reduce it is, stopping them from getting their butt kicked, basically. They can end up in prison. They could be in scenarios where there's, significant road rage, so they're in trouble with the law. Perhaps, professionals won't see them, or perhaps they're in relationships where there's a considerable amount of domestic violence as well. So today we're looking at a overcompensatory coping mode called bully attack. I'm Rita Younan. I'm a clinical psychologist and advanced schema therapist, supervisor and trainer.
And I'm Ruth Holt, and I'm also an advanced schema therapist, supervisor, trainer. Yes, Rita, we are looking at the modes and looking at how they express themselves, particularly in this one today, looking at an overcompensation mode. So remember, that's the mode where I don't want to feel perhaps guilty or dominated or unsafe. And so I'm going to act opposite, or I'm going to make you feel those horrible feelings I don't want to feel. So I might start to make you feel unsafe, you feel dominated. And when we're in a bully attack mode, we might be using threats, we might be intimidating, using aggression, maybe coercing someone to do what we want. So using power over, or getting back at, kind of retaliating and asserting ourselves, perhaps even, getting some kind of pleasure from attacking people. How do you see it presenting, with the clients you're working with, Rita?
Look, I think, typically when clients come in this particular mode, when it presents itself, it's about somebody else in their lives and kind of how it's manifested itself in their relationships, etc. But sometimes as clinicians, we can be on the receiving end of this particular mode. And it's a tricky mode to deal with, because when you're on the receiving end of it, like you said before, there's threats, there's intimidation, there's aggression, and it's hard to stay firm in your healthy professional self and know that behind that is a little kid who feels really mistrustful of the situation, feels potentially inferior and vulnerable, and wants to ensure that they're in charge in this particular moment.
Yeah, it can be a mode that can be learnt, in a situation where you might feel very, very powerless and bad things are happening and you want to feel powerful. And bully attack certainly gives you that sense of power. Or it may be that in the environment you were growing up in, this was considered a fairly normal way of getting your needs met. We use our fists, then we might use our words. That was kind of how the world was in that situation growing up. So we can learn it growing up. We can experience it as a way to feel power, a way to not feel those distressing feelings. And as clinicians, that's a really important thing for us to explore with our clients. Where did you learn this way of being? Where did you learn that you needed to yell or attack or dominate to be okay? That's a very important question.
And another important question just on that too is a distinction with the angry child mode, because I think sometimes they really get confused. And as you're saying, Ruth, that sometimes the evolution of this particular coping mode is around the fact that it was something that they used to protect themselves, or maybe they couldn't and they were powerless, but then they learned that I'm no longer going to be the victim. There are going to be victims, and I'm the one that's going to be doing the bullying. Which is different to the angry child, which is more about a perceived injustice, and there's, the freedom to express their grievances around something not being okay in terms of their needs met. Would you add anything more to that, Ruth, in terms of the distinction? Because I think it's quite important.
Yeah, I think it feels a little bit different in the room. I mean, I think with the angry modes, there is a bit of flipping. So you might get a bit of angry child and a bit of bully attack. But just if when someone's in one mode versus the other, I think with angry child, I get a sense that I do want to hear what it is. Like there's a sense that there's something really important I need to hear. And so I'm leaning in. Whereas with bully attack, I'm kind of pulling back, or perhaps even wanting to, leave the room. So there's a different feel in the room, and it feels more like I'm going to get it. I'm going to be dominated, or I'm in danger.
Yeah, and just on that too, as a clinician, I guess it's important to be aware of your feelings around anger. How that was expressed in your family, how comfortable you feel around it, etc. Because that's going to have an impact on how you, work with a bully attack or an angry child mode.
Yeah, that's right. So it's, it's a mode that I think can be hard sometimes, you know, if you're a client perhaps and you're starting to recognize some of these sort of things as we're talking, you know, there can be some shame. Like, I don't want to admit perhaps that I might be using this mode. And that's where I think schema therapy is such a helpful approach, because one of the things we're doing is starting to externalize this mode and really understand it in order to shift it. So I think schema therapy has such a great range of tools where we can learn, you know, where it came from, how it plays out today in my life, what are the early warning cues and the things that are going to trigger it. And also we can go back and do some trauma processing work, imagery scripting for the origins of it, so we're not as easily activated into this mode. We also encourage therapists to set limits on this mode. It's not okay in the therapy room for someone to feel unsafe or dominated. And we want to do that in an empathic way, but in a very clear way.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Ruth. If I can just share with you a story where I had a client who had a really strong bully attack, you know, and there was always the anxiety, you know, whenever I was seeing this particular individual where, you know, am I going to be on the receiving end of some kind of attack? And setting limits was really important for our work together. And when we finished, you know, one of the things that he said was, thank you for actually sticking up and setting limits to that side of me, because a lot of clinicians hadn't done that. And so without doing that, he couldn't move forward with his relationships.
Yeah, so that's one of the really big impacts, isn't it, on bully attack, that our relationships can be really dysfunctional. We can be losing people. We can feel very lonely, and it can be hard to know what to do. And so we want to encourage clients, you know, if this is something that you're recognizing it, bring that up with your schema therapist and start to notice that mode and kind of track back where you might have been learning that from. And if you're a therapist, we want to encourage you to get some training, get some support to stay in that strong, confident, calm therapist role so that you can manage a bully attack mode in the room. Well, that's our 7 minutes, Rita. And so if people would like more information on training, they can follow the link at the end of the video.